The massive ships of the Galactic Empire's Fourth Fleet hung in space like silver mountains against the dark void. Each vessel stretched for miles and gleamed with polished metal that reflected the distant stars. At the center of this mighty formation sat the flagship Eternal Dominion, a ship so large it had its own weather systems inside its hull. Supreme Admiral Zexthara stood on the bridge of his command ship and looked out at the endless black of space through windows that were bigger than most buildings. His four arms moved with practiced precision as he reviewed the fleet reports on multiple screens at once. The Admiral's blue skin had the deep color that came with age and wisdom among his people, and his 6 eyes could process information faster than most computers. "Admiral," called out his communications officer, a young Krillian with nervous tentacles that twitched when he spoke. "We are detecting 3 small vessels at the edge of our sensor range. They appear to be moving slowly through this sector." Zexthara's main eyes focused on the tactical display, while his secondary eyes continued reading reports. "What is their configuration? Are they scouts from an unknown civilization?" The sensor operator, a tall being with crystal formations growing from his skull, made clicking sounds as he worked. "The ships are small, Admiral, very small. Each one is maybe 100 meters long at most. They do not match any known designs in our database." "Interesting," the Admiral said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had conquered 17 star systems. "They could be advance units testing our defenses. Bring the fleet to yellow alert and open communication channels." "We will. Follow proper first contact protocols." Across the void of space, Captain Jake Morrison sat in the pilot seat of his ship Lucky Break and took a long drink from his coffee mug. The mug had a picture of a cartoon fish on it and the words, "Worlds." "Okayest Fisherman," printed in faded letters. Jake was 42 years old, with graying hair and a beard that his wife always said needed trimming. He wore his favorite fishing shirt, the one with holes in both elbows. "Hey, Lisa," he called over the radio to the ship flying nearby. "You getting any bites over there?" Captain Lisa Park's voice crackled back through the speaker. Lisa was the owner of Second Chance, a ship she had bought used from a cargo hauler who went out of business. "Nothing yet, Jake. Ben's having better luck than both of us combined." From the third ship, Murphy's Law, came the voice of Captain Ben Carter. Ben was the oldest of the 3 at 55, and he had been fishing these waters since before the other 2 were born. "That's because you 2 talk too much. Fish can hear you yakking from here to Sunday." Jake laughed and was about to respond when his communication system started making noises he had never heard before. Lights began flashing on his control panel in patterns that seemed almost musical. "Oh, guys, my radio is doing something weird." Lisa's ship started experiencing the same thing. "Mine too." "What do you think it is?" Ben's gravelly voice came through, with the confidence of someone who had seen everything. "Probably just solar interference. Happens sometimes out here in the deep black. But this was not solar interference. This was the Galactic Empire attempting to establish communication using their most advanced translation protocols." The Empire's message contained formal greetings in 17 different languages, mathematical sequences to prove intelligence, and detailed information about their peaceful intentions, despite their overwhelming military superiority. What Jake Morrison heard was a lot of electronic squealing, followed by a voice that sounded like it was speaking through water. "Greetings, unknown vessels. This is Supreme Admiral Zexthara of the Galactic Empire Fourth Fleet. We come in peace to establish diplomatic relations with your civilization. Please respond using standard galactic communication protocols." Jake looked at his radio with confusion. He tapped the microphone a few times and shrugged. Hey there, big guy. You folks lost or something?" "This is Jake Morrison on the Lucky Break. We're just out here doing some fishing." On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, chaos erupted. The translation department had never encountered such casual disregard for proper diplomatic procedure. The Supreme Admiral was being addressed as Big Guy by what appeared to be a military commander of an unknown species. Admiral, the communications officer said with trembling tentacles. The alien commander is using extremely informal language patterns. Our computers are having difficulty processing the casual nature of their response. Lisa Park had been listening to the exchange and decided to join in. Hi there, space people. This is Lisa on Second Chance. Are you guys tourists? Do you need directions to the nearest gas station or something? The Empire's Xenopsychology department immediately went into emergency session. 2 different alien commanders had now responded with what appeared to be offers of assistance mixed with subtle challenges to Imperial authority. The reference to gas station was particularly puzzling since their computers translated it as some kind of fuel depot, but the casual way it was offered suggested these beings had fuel resources so abundant they could afford to be generous. With strangers, Ben Carter had been trying to ignore the whole situation, but the chatter was scaring away the fish. Would you people mind keeping it down? Some of us are trying to concentrate here. We're just out here fishing, not looking for trouble. In the Empire's Threat Assessment Center, alarms began sounding. The 3rd alien commander had just mentioned fishing, which their computers immediately flagged as a potential military operation. Cross-referencing with their database of hunting and gathering behaviors across known species, the AI systems concluded that fishing might be some form of resource extraction warfare, or possibly a reconnaissance technique. Admiral reported. The chief analyst, his scales turning orange with excitement. The aliens appeared to be conducting some form of coordinated fishing operation. This could be a military exercise disguised as a peaceful activity. Admiral Zexthara's 6 eyes narrowed as he considered this information. In his 300 years of military service, he had learned that the most dangerous enemies were often those who appeared the most harmless. Continue monitoring their communications. I want a full tactical analysis of their formation and behavior patterns. Meanwhile, Jake Morrison was getting frustrated with his radio. Is anyone else having trouble understanding these folks? They keep using big words and talking about protocols and stuff. Lisa's voice came back cheerful as always. They seem nice enough. Maybe they're from the government or something. You know how government people talk. Ben's response was typically direct. Government or not, they're spooking the fish. If they don't move along soon, I'm going to have to ask them politely to find somewhere else to hover around. The Empire's computers nearly overloaded trying to process the implied threat. In Ben's statement, here was an alien commander calmly suggesting he could force the entire 4th Fleet to relocate if they continued to interfere with his operations. Supreme Admiral Zexthara stared at the tactical display, showing 3 tiny ships facing down. His massive fleet without any apparent concern. In all his years of conquest, he had never encountered such confident warriors. Supreme Admiral Zexthara paced across the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, with all 4 of his arms clasped behind his back. His military training told him that these 3 small ships represented a threat unlike anything the Empire had faced. Before, no known civilization had ever responded to Imperial first contact protocols with such casual confidence. Battle stations, he commanded, his voice echoing through the massive ship. All weapon systems to stand by. I want energy shields at maximum power and fighter squadrons ready for launch. Throughout the 4th Fleet, thousands of crew members rushed to their positions. Giant cannons that could destroy entire cities began rotating toward the 3 human ships. Energy shields that could withstand the explosion of a small star flickered to life around each Imperial vessel. The space around the fleet filled with the blue glow of weapons, charging and defensive. Systems activating. On board the Lucky Break, Jake Morrison was completely unaware that the largest military force in the known galaxy was preparing to attack. He was more concerned about the fact that his fishing line had gotten tangled again. "Dang it," he muttered as he worked to untangle the mess. "This always happens when I'm not paying attention." His wife had packed him a cooler full of her homemade chocolate chip cookies, and Jake figured that sharing food was always a good way to make friends. He picked up his radio microphone and spoke in the same friendly tone he used when talking to neighbors over the fence. "Hey there, space folks. I don't know if you guys eat cookies, but my wife Martha made way too many for just us three. You're welcome to come over and grab some if you want. They're really good, I promise." In the Empire's biological warfare department, panic spread like wildfire. The alien commander was offering them some kind of organic compound called cookies that his mate had created in excess quantities. The computer analysis suggested these cookies were some form of prepared biological agent designed to affect alien physiology. "Admiral," reported the chief science officer, her voice shaking, "the enemy commander is attempting to deploy biological warfare agents. He claims his breeding partner has produced more of these weapons than their force requires." Admiral Zexthara's 6 eyes went wide. These humans were not only confident enough to threaten the Imperial fleet, but they were also prepared to use biological weapons. Full biological containment protocols immediately. No Imperial personnel are to approach those vessels under any circumstances. Lisa Park had been listening to Jake's offer and thought it was a great idea. She had always been the social one among the 3 friends, and she believed that most problems could be solved with a little friendliness and good music. "That's sweet of you, Jake. Hey, space people, if you decide to come over for cookies, I've got a killer sound system we could fire up. Nothing like good music to make new friends." Lisa's ship's second chance had been equipped with a premium audio system that she had installed herself. It was her pride and joy, capable of playing music loud enough to be heard from several miles away. She had spent her life savings on speakers that could make the whole ship vibrate with bass, the Empire's sonic warfare. Specialists immediately went into high alert. The second alien commander had just announced her intention to deploy what she described as a killer sound system. Imperial databases contained records of civilizations that used sonic weapons capable of liquefying enemy crews through harmonic resonance. "Sound-based weaponry detected," announced the tactical officer. "The enemy is prepared to use both biological and sonic warfare against our forces." Ben Carter was getting more annoyed by the minute. The big ships were blocking his view of the good fishing spots, and all the radio chatter was definitely scaring away any fish in the area. He had been looking forward to this fishing trip all month, and these tourists or government people, or whatever they were, had completely ruined his peace and quiet. "Look here, folks," Ben said into his radio with the tone of a man who had run out of patience. "I don't know what you people are up to with all those fancy lights and big ships, but you're scaring away all the fish. Now I'm asking nicely for you to move along and find somewhere else to do whatever it is you're doing. If you don't want to move along, well, we'll just have to make you move along." The threat assessment computers aboard the Eternal Dominion began smoking from overload. The third alien commander had just delivered what appeared to be an ultimatum to the entire Fourth Fleet. He was calmly stating that if the Imperial forces did not voluntarily withdraw, his small force would compel them to retreat. "Admiral?" The chief tactical officer reported with disbelief in his voice. "Our computers are trying to calculate the power requirements for forcibly relocating a Galactic-class military fleet. The numbers don't make sense. Either these beings have technology beyond our understanding, or they're completely insane." Admiral Zexthara stared at the tactical display showing the 3 tiny human ships. Each one was smaller than his flagships. Small as shuttle, yet their commanders were speaking as if they possessed enough firepower to destroy his entire fleet. In his centuries of military experience, he had learned that the most dangerous enemies were often those who seemed the most confident. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "we are dealing with a post-scarcity civilization that has developed beyond the need for large military vessels. Their confidence suggests they have weapon systems we cannot detect or understand." The Empire's intelligence analysts were working frantically to decode the human communications. Every casual phrase was examined for hidden military significance. When Jake mentioned that his wife had made way too many cookies, they interpreted this as evidence of massive industrial capacity for biological weapon production. Lisa's reference to her killer sound system was analyzed as a description of military-grade sonic weaponry. The fact that she wanted to fire it up clearly indicated readiness to deploy these weapons at a moment's notice. Ben's threat to make them move along was interpreted as a casual reference to technology capable of relocating entire fleets against bare will. The implications were terrifying. "Sir," the communications officer reported, "we are receiving more transmissions from the alien vessels. The first commander is now asking if we want to share something called beer and discussing the weather patterns in this sector." Admiral Zeekstara's primary brain began to ache. These aliens were either the most sophisticated psychological warfare experts in the galaxy, or they were genuinely unaware of the massive military force they were facing. Either possibility was deeply unsettling. "Continue monitoring their communications," he ordered. "I want every word analyzed for strategic intelligence. And send a message to Imperial Command. Tell them we may have encountered a civilization that poses a significant threat to Imperial expansion." Meanwhile, Jake Morrison opened his cooler and pulled out a cold beer, completely unaware that his casual behavior was being interpreted as the actions of a master military strategist implementing advanced psychological warfare techniques against the most powerful fleet in the known galaxy. Admiral Zeekstara decided that direct observation was the only way to understand these mysterious human warriors. He ordered his best diplomatic team to take a shuttle and approach the alien vessels for close inspection. The shuttle Harmonious. Dawn launched from the Eternal Dominion, carrying Ambassador Krillinax and a team of the Empire's finest xenobiologists, weapons experts, and cultural analysts. Ambassador Krillinax was a seasoned diplomat who had successfully negotiated with over 40 different alien species. His pale green skin was marked with the ritual scars that showed his high rank, and his 3 heads could think independently while sharing the same consciousness. As the shuttle approached the human ships, he used all 3 of his brains to analyze what he was seeing. "By the 7 moons of Zephyria," whispered the weapons specialist, a spider-like being whose compound eyes could detect energy signatures across 17 different spectrums. "Their hull construction appears to be held together with some kind of gray bonding material." The xenobiologist, whose crystal body could analyze molecular structures through proximity sensors, made excited clicking sounds. "That gray substance is showing incredible tensile strength. It must be some form of advanced molecular adhesive unknown to our science." What they were actually observing was duct tape that Jake Morrison had used to patch a small hole in his ship's hull after a minor collision with space debris 2 months earlier. The tape had held perfectly well through several fishing trips, and Jake had completely forgotten it was there. "Look at the formation they're maintaining," observed Ambassador Krillinax through his center head, while his left head took notes and his right head monitored communications. "They're staying within exactly 300 meters of each other. This suggests a highly sophisticated tactical coordination system." The truth was much simpler. Jake, Lisa, and Ben always stayed close together during fishing trips because they liked to chat over the radio and share stories. If they spread out too far, their old communication equipment didn't work very well, And fishing was more fun when you could talk to your friends. The shuttle moved closer to examine the lucky break. In detail, through the observation windows, the diplomatic team could see Jake Morrison working with some kind of complex equipment that appeared to require great skill and concentration. The primary commander is operating what appears to be advanced technical equipment, reported the weapons specialist. His movements suggest years of specialized training. Jake was actually trying to untangle his fishing line again. He had gotten distracted while talking on the radio and managed to create a knot that would have impressed a sailor. His face showed the concentration of a man determined not to cut the line and waste a good fishing hook. Ambassador Krillinex ordered the shuttle to move to the second ship. Through the windows of Second Chance, they observed Lisa Park working with what appeared to be a control panel covered in dozens of switches, dials, and glowing indicators. The second commander is interfacing with an extremely complex control system, noted the xenobiologist. The number of individual controls suggests technology far beyond our current understanding. Lisa was actually adjusting her stereo system, trying to find a radio station that came in clearly this far from Earth. The complex control panel was just a really good equalizer and sound mixer that she had bought from a musician friend who needed money for rent. The diplomatic shuttle approached Murphy's Law last, and what they saw there made the entire team fall silent. Ben Carter was on the deck of his ship, working with equipment that defied explanation. He had several long, flexible rods arranged in precise positions, each one connected to nearly invisible lines that stretched out into space. Molecular cutting. Wires, breathed the weapons specialist. He's deployed multiple molecular cutting wires in a defensive pattern around his vessel. Ben was fishing with 4 different rods at the same time, a technique he had perfected over decades of practice. Each fishing line was positioned to cover a different depth and area around his ship, maximizing his chances of catching something worthwhile. The xenobiologist's crystals began glowing with excitement. Those spherical objects floating at the end of each wire must be some kind of detection devices. Notice how they respond to the slightest movement in the surrounding medium. The spherical objects were fishing bobbers, designed to float on the surface and indicate when a fish was biting by moving up and down. Ben had painted them bright colors so he could see them easily against the darkness of space. Ambassador Krillinex focused all 3 of his heads on Ben's equipment. Look at the small metallic objects attached to each wire. They appear to be precision-crafted miniature devices. The metallic objects were fishing hooks, which Ben had carefully selected based on the size of fish he hoped to catch. Some were small for the little fish that traveled in schools, and others were large enough to handle the big ones that lived in the deeper parts of space. The third commander appears to have deployed some kind of portable weapons arsenal, reported the weapons specialist. That rectangular container beside him is filled with hundreds of different metallic devices, each one crafted for a specific purpose. Ben's tackle box was indeed filled with hundreds of different fishing lures, hooks, weights, and other equipment. Each one was designed for specific fishing conditions, and Ben could tell you exactly when and how to use every single piece. The shuttle moved back to observe all 3 ships from a distance. The diplomatic team watched in fascination as the human commanders maintained their formation while continuing their mysterious fishing operation. They're conducting some form of coordinated scanning operation, concluded Ambassador Krillinex. The precision of their movements and the sophisticated equipment they're using suggests this is a military reconnaissance mission disguised as a peaceful activity. The 3 friends were simply enjoying a quiet day of fishing together, just as they had done dozens of times before. They kept their ships close so they could talk easily, and they had positioned themselves in this particular area because Ben's grandfather had told him it was a good spot for catching the big ones. Back on the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Zexthara received the full report from his diplomatic team. The evidence was overwhelming. These humans possessed technology that appeared primitive, but was actually far more advanced than anything in the Imperial arsenal. Their casual behavior and simple language patterns were clearly sophisticated camouflage designed to hide their true capabilities. "Sir," reported his intelligence officer, "we've completed our analysis of their tactical formation. They call it staying close to chat, but our computers indicate it's actually a complex defensive pattern that provides maximum coverage while maintaining communication links and mutual support capabilities." The Admiral nodded grimly. These humans were clearly master strategists who had turned deception into an art form. Their ability to appear harmless while deploying advanced military technology was both impressive and terrifying. "Continue observation. From a safe distance," he ordered. "I want to know everything about their operational procedures before we attempt any further contact." The morning of the second day brought new terror to Admiral Zexthara, as his sensors detected multiple ships approaching their position. The tactical display showed 6 additional vessels moving toward the area where the 3 human ships continued their mysterious fishing operation. Each new ship appeared to be the same size as the original 3, and they were all approaching in what looked like a coordinated attack formation. "Admiral," reported his communications officer with barely controlled panic in his voice, "we're detecting 6 more alien vessels approaching our position. They're maintaining the same communication silence as the original 3 ships." Admiral Zexthara felt his 4 hearts beating faster as he studied the tactical display. The humans had been testing his defenses with their advanced scouts, and now their main battle fleet was arriving. Red alert throughout the fleet. All weapons to full power. Prepare for immediate jump to hyperspace if necessary. The 6 new ships were actually fishing boats belonging to other members of the Outer Rim Fishing Club. Captain Ron Davis was piloting his pride and joy. The catch of the day, a ship he had painted bright yellow because his wife said it looked cheerful. Captain Amy Lopez commanded Fishtailis, which she had bought from a retired cargo hauler and converted for fishing trips. Captain Steve Wright owned the Big One, named after the fish she claimed to have caught, but could never prove. The other 3 ships belonged to Captain Pete Johnson in deep waters, Captain Carl Smith aboard Final Cast, and Captain Mike Brown, who flew Lucky Strike. All 6 captains had received Jake Morrison's message about good fishing in this sector, and they had decided to join the fun for what they called the annual Outer Rim Fishing Tournament. "Jake, you old dog," came Ron Davis's voice over the radio. "You didn't tell us you found the mother lode out here. Look at all this space to spread out and fish." Jake Morrison was delighted to hear his friend's voice. "Ron, I was wondering when you guys would show up. We've been having a slow day so far, but Ben thinks the fish are just being careful because of our new neighbors." Admiral Zexthara listened to this communication with growing dread. The human commander was referring to Imperial fleet as neighbors and suggesting that their massive military presence was making the local wildlife careful. This implied that the humans considered his entire battle fleet to be nothing more than a minor inconvenience. Amy Lopez's voice joined the conversation. "Who are the fancy folks with all the shiny ships? They look expensive." Lisa Park answered with a laugh. "We're not sure. They showed up yesterday and have been taking pictures and acting all mysterious. Jake offered them cookies, but they haven't responded yet." The Empire's intelligence computers nearly exploded trying to process this new information. The humans were referring to Imperial dreadnoughts as fancy folks with shiny ships and treating the most powerful military force in the galaxy like curious tourists. Steve Wright had been examining the Imperial fleet through his ship's telescope. "Those are some big ships. I wonder what they're doing way out here. Maybe they're lost." In the Empire's Strategic Planning Center, emergency meetings were being held at every level of command. The arrival of additional human vessels had confirmed their worst fears. This was clearly a coordinated military operation designed to test Imperial defenses and gather intelligence about their capabilities. "Sir," reported the chief intelligence analyst, "the new arrivals are using what appears to be the same advanced stealth technology as the original 3 vessels. Our sensors can barely detect their energy signatures, and their hull composition remains unknown." The human ships were actually just old civilian vessels with minimal power systems and basic metal hulls. They appeared nearly invisible to Imperial sensors because they weren't trying to hide. They simply didn't produce much energy or electronic noise. Captain Pete Johnson had brought his famous fish finder, a piece of equipment he claimed could locate fish from incredible distances. "I'm picking up some interesting readings on the fish finder. There might be a whole school of big ones deeper down." The Empire's sensors detected Pete's fish finder sending out sonar pulses and immediately classified it as an active scanning system. The fact that it was designed to detect big ones deeper down suggested the humans were searching for something specific in the lower levels of local space. "They're conducting deep space reconnaissance," reported the sensor operator. "Their scanning equipment is more sophisticated than anything we've seen before." Carol Smith had started cooking lunch on her ship's small grill, and the smoke from her cooking began drifting through space toward the Imperial fleet. She was making hamburgers and hot dogs for anyone who wanted to join her for what she called a fishing tournament cookout. The Empire's chemical detection systems went crazy when they detected the smoke. Emergency protocols activated throughout the fleet as soldiers put on protective gear and sealed their ships against chemical attack. "Chemical warfare deployment detected," announced the weapons officer. "The enemy is releasing some kind of airborne agent into the surrounding area." Admiral Zexthara ordered his ships to move further away from the human vessels. "Maintain safe distance from the chemical weapons. Continue monitoring their activities." Mike Brown had brought along his new fishing technique that involved throwing large nets into space and then slowly pulling them back to his ship. He called it trolling for the big catch and was convinced it would revolutionize space fishing. Got the Empire's tactical computers identified Mike's nets as some kind of energy weapon deployment system. The way he threw them out and then slowly retrieved them suggested a sophisticated capture or entanglement weapon designed to disable enemy vessels. "Sir," reported the tactical officer, "one of the enemy vessels is deploying what appears to be an energy net system. The weapon appears designed to capture or disable target ships." Steve Wright finally caught something on his line and shouted with excitement, "This is it, boys. This is the big one I've been waiting for all year." The Empire's threat assessment computers interpreted Steve's victory cry as a countdown to the deployment of humanity's ultimate weapon. The phrase, "This is the big one," clearly indicated that the humans were about to reveal their most powerful military capability. "All ships prepare for immediate withdrawal," ordered Admiral Zexthara. "The enemy commander has just announced the deployment of their primary weapon system." The Imperial fleet began moving away from the human fishing boats as quickly as their massive engines could manage. Emergency beacons were activated to warn other Imperial forces about the dangerous human battle fleet that had somehow managed to deploy 9 warships without being detected. Meanwhile, the fishing tournament continued with friendly competition. Shared meals and tall tales about the ones that got away, while the most powerful military force in the galaxy retreated in terror from their weekend hobby. The emergency session of the Imperial High Command took place in the most secure chamber on the capital world of Zephyria Prime. Emperor Valdris himself attended the meeting, his ancient form seated on a throne made from crystallized starlight. Around the massive circular table sat the most powerful beings in the galaxy, each one representing a different aspect of imperial authority. Admiral Zixthara stood before this assembly of ultimate power and delivered his report with the gravity of someone who had witnessed something that would change the course of galactic history. Your Imperial Majesty, we have encountered a civilization that possesses military capabilities beyond our current understanding. The Emperor's 6 arms moved in the ritual gesture of deep contemplation, while his advisors whispered among themselves in a dozen different languages. Tell us about these humans, Admiral. What makes them so dangerous? They disguise their most advanced warships as primitive recreational vessels, Admiral Zexthara explained, calling up holographic displays of the human fishing boats. Their commanders treat galactic conquest as such a casual weekend activity that they offer to share food with enemy forces and discuss weather patterns while deploying weapons of mass destruction. Grand General Kithara, whose species had conquered 47 star systems through pure military might, leaned forward with interest. What kind of weapons did they deploy? Biological warfare agents disguised as food items, sonic weapons described as entertainment systems, and molecular cutting wires deployed in defensive patterns around their vessels, the Admiral replied. They also demonstrated the ability to conduct deep space reconnaissance while maintaining perfect tactical coordination. The Emperor's chief science advisor, a being whose crystalline brain could process information at quantum speeds, made rapid calculations. The power requirements for maintaining molecular cutting wires in a vacuum would be enormous. Their energy generation capabilities must be thousands of times more advanced than our own. Minister of Intelligence Zoreth spoke next, his mechanical voice carrying the authority of someone who knew the secrets of every civilization in the galaxy. What evidence do we have of their industrial capacity? Admiral Zexthara activated another hologram, showing Jake Morrison's duct tape repair. Their construction techniques involve molecular bonding agents that appear crude but demonstrate tensile strength beyond our measuring capabilities. One of their commanders stated that his mate had produced biological weapons in quantities exceeding their military requirements. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. A civilization with such abundant resources that they could waste military-grade biological weapons spoke of technological development that defied imagination. They also demonstrated the ability to deploy reinforcements without our sensors detecting. Their approach, continued the Admiral. 6 additional warships arrived at the battlefield using stealth technology so advanced that they appeared to be moving through normal space without any energy signature. Emperor Valdris himself spoke, his voice carrying the weight of 3,000 years of rule. How did our diplomatic overtures fare? They responded to formal imperial greetings by asking if we needed directions to fuel stations. Admiral Zexthara said with barely concealed embarrassment. When we attempted to establish standard communication protocols, they offered to share recreational substances and suggested we join their social gathering. Grand General Kithra's scales turned deep purple with amazement. They were so confident in their military superiority that they invited Imperial forces to participate in their victory celebration. The Emperor's strategic advisor, whose 3 brains had planned the conquest of the Andromeda sector, spoke with awe in her voice. The psychological warfare implications are staggering. They projected such absolute confidence that our own forces began to doubt their capabilities. Minister Zoreth accessed his vast intelligence networks and cross-referenced the human encounter with every known military doctrine in the Imperial database. The combination of advanced technology disguised as primitive equipment, casual confidence in the face of overwhelming odds, and the ability to deploy forces without detection suggests a post-scarcity civilization that has evolved beyond conventional warfare concepts. Admiral Zexthara nodded grimly. I recommend that the entire sector be declared off-limits to Imperial expansion. These humans have demonstrated that they view our most powerful military forces as minor inconveniences at best. The Emperor stood from his throne, and every being in the chamber immediately prostrated themselves before his ancient wisdom. Let it be recorded in the Imperial Archives that humanity represents a significant threat to Imperial security. All future expansion in their direction is hereby forbidden. What classification shall we assign to this threat? Asked Minister Zor Wrath. Emperor Valdris considered carefully before answering. Ultra-classified. No Imperial citizen below the rank of Grand Admiral shall ever learn of this encounter. The official record shall state that Sector 7749 contains dangerous spatial anomalies that make colonization impossible. The meeting concluded with orders to establish monitoring stations at a safe distance from human space, and to redirect all Imperial expansion efforts toward the opposite side of the galaxy. Warning beacons were placed throughout the border regions with messages stating that the area contained advanced military training exercises by hostile forces. Back in Sector 7749, the Outer Rim fishing tournament concluded with Steve Wright winning first place for catching a fish that weighed nearly 40 pounds. The celebration included Carol Smith's famous potato salad, Ron Davis's secret recipe barbecue sauce, and stories that would be retold at fishing tournaments for years to come. Then, Carter finally caught the big fish he had been after for the entire weekend, a beautiful specimen that he photographed, and then released back into space because he believed in conservation. Jake Morrison's wife, Martha, was pleased to hear that her cookies had been offered to strangers, even though those strangers had been too shy to accept them. Lisa Park's music had provided the perfect soundtrack for the weekend, and everyone agreed that they should make this an annual tradition. The 9 fishing club members made plans to return to this exact spot next year for what they decided to call the first annual Outer Rim Fishing Championship. None of them ever knew that their weekend hobby had been classified as the most dangerous military threat the Galactic Empire had ever encountered. The Imperial monitoring stations recorded their annual return for the next several years, each time confirming to Imperial Command that humanity's elite naval training exercises were continuing on schedule. The fishing spot became legendary among the club members, who told stories about that weird weekend when some tourists with really fancy ships showed up and then left without saying goodbye. Jake Morrison still wondered sometimes if those space folks ever found their way to wherever they were going, and he hoped they had eventually found some good cookies somewhere along the way.